Victoria raised her glass of white wine, and everyone at the table fell silent. It was one of those uncomfortable silences that announce bad news. I was sitting at the end of the table, as always, in the chair furthest from the window. My grandson Liam was next to me, his jaw set tight. Richard, my son, looked at his wife with a mixture of pride and nervousness that I knew all too well. Victoria's house smelled of expensive perfume and fresh flowers she had arranged herself that afternoon. Everything was white and gray, modern furniture, abstract paintings on the walls. No family photos, no memories. Just design. Just appearance. I was wearing my beige dress, the same one I wore for Sunday service. I knew it was not enough for her. It never was. They had invited the whole family to announce the final details of the wedding. Cousins, uncles, close friends. About 20 people around that long, light wood table that looked like it had been ripped from a catalog. Victoria had cooked, or rather, she had hired someone to cook. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. She smiled and looked at each guest before speaking. Her dress was cream-colored, fitted, elegant. She wore her hair in a low bun. She looked like an actress about to recite a rehearsed speech. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice soft but firm. "Liam and I have been planning this day for months, and we want it to be perfect. Absolutely perfect." There was polite applause. I did not clap. I just held my water glass with both hands, feeling the cold glass against my palms. Liam did not clap either. I noticed it out of the corner of my eye. "Because of that," Victoria continued, "we have made some important decisions regarding the ceremony and the reception. Decisions that, while difficult, we believe are necessary to maintain the harmony and elegance of the event." Something in her tone put me on alert. I knew that voice. It was the same one she used when she asked me not to visit without calling first. The same one she used when she told me my clothes were not appropriate for her social gatherings. "The ceremony will be intimate," she said, looking directly at where I was sitting now. "Only immediate family inside the church. Parents, siblings, Liam's paternal grandparents. The reception, however, will be larger. You are all invited to the party, of course." I felt something inside me contract. Paternal grandparents. She had said paternal grandparents. Liam's mother's parents had died years ago. I was the only living grandmother, and she had just excluded me. There was a confused murmur among the guests. My cousin Betty looked at me from the other side of the table with wide eyes. Richard lowered his gaze to his plate. Coward. He had always been a coward. "Victoria," someone said. "I think it was Frank, Richard's cousin. Margaret is the grandmother. She should be at the ceremony." Victoria smiled. That icy smile that never reached her eyes. "Of course Margaret is important to us," she replied, and the way she pronounced my name sounded fake, almost mocking. "But we have decided that the ceremony must be small, select. Margaret will be at the reception, where she can enjoy herself with all the other guests. It will be more comfortable for her, don't you think? The church has steep steps. And well, at her age, at my age." The words fell on me like stones. I felt the heat rising up my neck, up my cheeks, but I said nothing. I could not. My throat had closed up. "Besides," Victoria added, taking a sip of her wine, "we want the ceremony to be something special, only for the people who have really been a fundamental part of Liam's life, the people who have shaped him, who have invested in his education, in his future." Invested. That word pierced me. I had invested every single dollar I had in that boy. Every single damn dollar. When Richard lost his job and Victoria was still studying architecture, I paid for Liam's tuition for 2 years. I sold the jewelry my husband had given me. I worked until I was 65 sewing dresses for the neighbors in the subdivision. My hands still have the needle marks. But she did not know any of that. Or maybe she did, and that was exactly why she was saying it. Liam squeezed my hand under the table. His hand was cold and trembling. I wanted to tell him it was okay, that it did not matter, but I could not. Because it did matter. It mattered too much. "Mom," Liam responded, "this isn't—" "Liam, please," Victoria interrupted him firmly. "We have already discussed this. It is our wedding. Our rules. Our rules." As if marriage were a private club that only some had access to. Richard finally looked up. He looked at me for a second, Just a second, and I saw something in his eyes. Guilt? Shame? Whatever it was not enough to make him speak. He looked down again and brought the glass to his lips. My son, the boy I had carried in my arms when his father died. The boy who cried at night because he missed the man he had barely known. The boy I promised would never be alone, that I would be enough. That boy was now a man who could not defend me in front of his wife. Betty stood up abruptly. Her chair made a shrill noise against the hardwood floor. "This is disrespectful," she said with a trembling voice. Margaret raised Richard alone. She worked until she broke her back to give him everything. And now? "Betty, please," Richard interrupted her, without looking at her. "It's not your place." "Not my place?" Betty let out a bitter laugh. "And what is your place, Richard? Sitting there like a mute while your wife humiliates your mother?" The table erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Someone tried to change the subject. Someone else got up to go to the bathroom. Victoria kept that frozen smile on her face, but her knuckles were white around the wine glass. I still could not speak. Tears were gathering behind my eyes, but I was not going to let them fall. Not in front of her. I would not give her that pleasure. Liam stood up. He took his cell phone out of his pocket and held it up, looking at everyone present. There was something strange in his expression, something between fury and determination. "There is something everyone should know," he said in a clear, cold voice. "Something I have been keeping for weeks, because I thought maybe I was wrong. But after this, after what you just did to my grandmother, I have no doubts anymore." Victoria tensed. Richard set his glass down on the table with a sharp thud. "Liam?" "No," Richard began. "3 months ago," Liam continued, not letting his father finish, "I found some documents in my father's study. Documents about Grandma's house, the house where she has lived for 40 years. The house my grandfather bought with his own money before he died." The silence was now absolute. I could hear my own heart beating in my ears. "Victoria and my father have been trying to transfer that property to their name," Liam said, and his voice cracked slightly. "Without my grandmother's consent. They forged her signature on several documents. They plan to sell the house to fund this wedding and a trip to Europe they have planned for next year." I felt the floor moving under my feet. The house, my house. The house where I had raised Richard, where I still kept my husband's shirts in the closet because I did not have the heart to throw them away. The house where Liam had spent all his childhood summers. Victoria stood up suddenly, so fast that her chair fell backward. "That is a lie," she said in a sharp voice. "Liam, you have been very stressed with college. You are clearly confused." "I have the copies," Liam interrupted her, showing his phone. "Photographs of every document, emails between the two of you, conversations with the lawyer you hired, everything." Richard had gone completely pale. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Betty grabbed my arm. I think she thought I was going to faint. Maybe I thought so too, but I did not faint. I remained seated, looking at my son, the man who had betrayed every sacrifice I had made for him. "Mom," Richard said finally, and his voice sounded distant, almost unreal. "Let me explain. It's not how it sounds. We just wanted—" "What?" I interrupted him, and my own voice surprised me. It sounded calm, too calm. "You just wanted to rob me? You just wanted to leave me on the street? You just wanted to erase me from your lives?" He did not answer. Victoria had started to cry, but they were tears of rage, not regret. I stood up slowly. I felt my legs weak, but I stood firm. I looked at every person at that table. Some looked away. Others looked at me with pity. But Liam looked at me with something different, with loyalty, with love. "Not important enough for our wedding," I repeated Victoria's words in a low voice. "That was what you said. And maybe you are right. Maybe I am not important. But my house is, my dignity is, and my grandson. My grandson is the only important thing left in this family." I walked over to Liam and put a hand on his shoulder. "Keep those documents," I told him. "We are going to need them." Then I turned around and walked toward the door without looking back. I heard Richard calling me. I heard Victoria screaming something about lawyers and defamation. But I kept walking. Liam caught up with me on the street. The night was cold and the wind hit my face. But for the first time in years, I felt I could breathe. "Grandma," Liam said, tears running down his cheeks. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have." "You did the right thing," I told him, wiping the tears with my trembling hands. "You waited for the perfect moment." He hugged me tight and I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened falling on me like a wave. But there was something else, something they did not know, something I had been preparing for much longer than Liam imagined, because I was not the naive old woman they thought, and this war was just beginning. That night I could not sleep. I sat in the armchair in the living room, the same one where my husband used to read the newspaper every morning before going to work. It has been 30 years since his death, but sometimes I still feel like he is going to walk through that door, with his tired smile and his hands covered in grease from the mechanic shop where he worked. The house was silent, that heavy silence known only to those who live alone. I looked at the walls full of photographs. Richard as a child, in his school uniform. Richard graduating from the university. Richard on his wedding day with Victoria, smiling as if he had won the lottery. In all those photos I was there, always a little apart, always in the same dark dress, always smiling even though inside I felt invisible. When did all this start? When did my son stop seeing me as his mother and start seeing me as a problem? I closed my eyes and let the memories come. Richard was 7 when his father died. An accident on the highway. A semi-truck that ran a red light. My husband died in the hospital 3 hours later, and I was left alone with a boy who cried every night asking when Daddy would come back. We had nothing. The insurance barely covered the funeral. The house still had a mortgage. I worked cleaning offices in the mornings and sewing in the afternoons. Richard grew fast. He needed new shoes every 6 months, uniforms, books, school supplies. He never lacked anything. Never. Even if I had to skip meals, even if I had to wear the same clothes for years, he always had what he needed. He was a bright boy. He got the best grades in his class. The teachers said he had a future, that he could go far if he kept studying. And I clung to that hope as if it were the only thing keeping me alive. When it came time for college, we did not have the money for tuition. Richard wanted to study business administration at a private university. It was expensive, very expensive. But he had gotten a partial scholarship for his grades. We just needed to cover the rest. I sold my mother's jewelry, a gold necklace that had belonged to my grandmother, the pearl earrings my husband gave me for our 10th anniversary. They were not worth much, but it was enough for the first semester. I paid for the following semesters by working double shifts. I stopped going to church on Sundays because those were the only mornings I could sew for the clients who paid better. Richard graduated with honors. He got a job at a big firm in the city. He made good money. He told me that now he would take care of everything, that I could stop working, that I deserved it. And for a while it was like that. He deposited money for me every month. Not much, but enough for the house expenses, for food, for medicine. Then he met Victoria. She was different from the girls Richard had dated before. She came from a family with money. Her father was an architect, her mother a doctor. They lived in an elegant part of the city, in a house with a garden and a pool. Victoria had gone to private schools. She spoke French perfectly. She had traveled to Europe twice. The first time I brought her home, I noticed how she looked at everything. Subtly, but I noticed. The way her eyes scanned the peeling walls, the old furniture, the curtains faded by the sun. She smiled and was polite. But there was something in that smile that made me uncomfortable. Richard started to change after that. He stopped visiting me as often. When he came, he stayed for a short time. He was always in a hurry, always had some meeting, some commitment. The monthly deposits started arriving later, sometimes a week late, sometimes 2. When he announced he was marrying Victoria, I was happy for him. I really was. I thought maybe she would make him happy in a way I never could. I thought maybe a wife was what he needed to feel complete. The wedding was big and expensive. They got married in a church downtown, with white flowers everywhere, and a banquet for 200 people. I sat in the 3rd row, not the 1st. Victoria said the 1st row was for the bridal party. Richard said nothing. I wore my best dress, the gray one I had bought years ago for Richard's graduation. Victoria wore a white dress that cost more than what I earned in a year. She was beautiful. I could not deny that. She looked like a princess from those stories I read to Richard when he was a child. After the wedding, the visits became even scarcer. Richard had his own life now, his own house, his own family. I understood. Or at least that was what I told myself. Liam was born 2 years later. When I got the call from the hospital, I felt my heart beating strong again. A grandson. I was going to be a grandmother. I thought maybe this would bring my son back to me. That maybe now he would understand everything I had felt, everything I had sacrificed. I went to the hospital with a gift wrapped in colorful paper, a little blanket I had knitted for weeks. It was baby blue with yellow ducks. I had put all my love into every stitch. Victoria was in the hospital bed, pale but radiant. Richard was by her side, looking at the baby with an expression I had never seen on him. Pure love. Awe. When I got closer, he looked up and smiled. "Mom, look, it's Liam. Liam Richard Marquez." They had named him after my husband. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I took that tiny baby in my arms and knew I would love him with every fiber of my being. During the first few years, they needed me. Victoria had gone back to work almost immediately after giving birth. Her career was important, she said. She could not put it aside for motherhood, so I took care of Liam. I went to their house every morning. I fed him, bathed him, played with him, put him to sleep. Richard paid me for it. $50 a week. I never told him I did not need that money, that I would have done it for free, that every minute with my grandson was a gift. Liam grew up with me. His first words were in my house. He took his first steps in this living room, holding on to that same armchair where I am sitting now. When he had nightmares, he called for me, not his mother. When he was sick, he wanted me to take care of him. Victoria tolerated it. I think deep down it was convenient for her to have a free nanny. But there was always that tension, that discomfort when I arrived at her house. The way she frowned when Liam talked about the things we did together, the cookies we baked, the stories I told him, the old songs I taught him. "Margaret, don't give him so many sweets. He's going to get sick. Margaret, those clothes you bought him aren't the brand we use. Margaret, please don't teach him those old songs. They sound depressing." I nodded and smiled. I always nodded and smiled, because I was afraid. Afraid that if I protested, if I said something, they would take Liam away from me, and he was the only thing keeping me sane. When Liam turned 6, Victoria told me they didn't need me anymore. They had hired a professional nanny, a young girl with certificates and references, someone who spoke French with Liam and taught him modern things. Richard told me over the phone. He didn't even have the courage to tell me in person. "Mom, we need to make some changes. Liam is growing up and needs a different kind of care, but you can still visit him whenever you want." Whenever I wanted, as if I were a stranger, as if I needed permission to see my own grandson. The visits became scheduled. I had to call beforehand, ask if it was a good time. Sometimes Victoria said Liam had swimming lessons, or music, or that they were busy. I waited. I always waited. Liam continued coming to my house on weekends, at least for a while. But as he grew, those visits also became spaced out. He had friends, activities, soccer games. It was normal. It was part of growing up. But I missed him. I missed the little boy who hugged me and told me I was his favorite person in the world. Richard's monthly deposits stopped when Liam was 8. He said I didn't need them anymore, that I had my pension, that the house was paid off, and he was right. Technically, I didn't need them, but it hurt anyway. It hurt to feel like I wasn't useful anymore, that I was good for nothing. Victoria started making comments about my way of dressing, about my house, about my accent, always with a smile, always disguised as concern. "Margaret, you should update your wardrobe a little. There are very cheap stores where you can find modern things. Margaret, this house is too big for you alone. Haven't you thought about moving to a smaller apartment? Margaret, when you talk to Liam, try not to tell him so many sad stories from the past. It's important for him to have a positive mindset." Richard never contradicted her, never defended me. He just nodded and changed the subject. There was a moment, about 3 years ago, when I thought things would improve. Liam had started college and came to visit me more often. He told me about his classes, his friends, the girls he liked. We were reconnecting. I felt important to someone again. But Victoria noticed, and she didn't like it. She started planning family trips on weekends, outings, meals, events. Always when Liam had planned to visit me, he apologized, said he would come next week. But next week there was always something else. I stopped pressing. I stopped calling so much. I made myself small, invisible, so as not to bother. I thought if I made myself small enough, maybe they would let me stay in their lives, even if it was on the margins. And then came the documents. 6 months ago, Richard came to visit me. Something rare, because he never came alone. He brought some papers in a manila folder. He told me he needed me to sign some things related to the house. Legal procedures, taxes, boring things. I didn't understand much of that. He had always handled my important papers. I took the pen and was about to sign. But something stopped me. A voice in my head, maybe my husband's voice, telling me to wait. "Let me read it first," I told him. Richard tensed up. "Mom, they're just formalities, technical things you aren't going to understand." Those words hurt me. As if I were stupid, as if I were incapable. "I still want to read it," I insisted. He sighed, annoyed, but left me the papers. He said he had to go, that he would come by in a few days to pick up the signed ones. That night I tried to read the documents. The legal language was complicated, full of words I didn't know, but I understood enough. I understood that they were transferring ownership of my house to Richard's name. I understood that I would be signing away my home, everything I had left of my husband, everything I had paid for with my sweat. I didn't sign. I put the papers in a drawer and waited. Richard called a week later. I told him I needed more time, that I wanted to consult with someone. He got angry. He told me I was complicating things, that I didn't trust him, that after everything he had done for me, this was how I repaid him. I hung up the phone trembling. It was then I knew something was very wrong, that my son, the boy to whom I had dedicated my life, was trying to take the only thing I had. But I said nothing. I didn't confront him. I just observed, and I waited. Because one thing I have learned in these 70 years of life is that people show their true faces when they think they have already won. And I needed to see how far they were capable of going. Now, sitting in my living room, with the echo of Victoria's words still resonating in my ears, I know my silence is over. I know the war I had been avoiding has finally arrived. And this time I am not going to make myself small. This time I am going to fight. The next morning I woke up with my body aching. I had slept maybe 2 hours, sitting in that armchair, my mind spinning like a whirlwind. Sunlight came through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust floating in the air. Everything looked old, worn, forgotten, like me. I made myself a coffee and sat at the table. My hands were shaking as I held the cup. It wasn't fear, it was rage. A rage I had been keeping for years, and that now threatened to explode. The phone rang 3 times that morning. It was Richard. I didn't answer. Then I got messages. First from him, then from Victoria. "Mom, we need to talk. Last night was a misunderstanding. Margaret, Liam is very confused. We would like to clear things up with you before this gets out of control." Misunderstanding. Confused. As if I were the one inventing things. As if my grandson had lied. I deleted the messages without replying. I needed to think. I needed a plan. But, more than anything, I needed proof. Liam had said he had photographs of the documents, but I needed the originals. I needed something that no lawyer could refute. I dressed in my simplest clothes and went out to the street. The neighborhood was waking up. Betty was sweeping her sidewalk. Frank was opening his grocery store. They greeted me as always, with that warm familiarity of those who have been neighbors for decades. They knew nothing of what was happening, and I wasn't going to tell them. Not yet. I walked 4 blocks to the bakery on the corner. There, at a table in the back, Liam was waiting for me. He had deep circles under his eyes and wrinkled clothes. It looked like he hadn't slept either. "Grandma," he said, standing up when he saw me enter. We hugged in silence. He smelled of cold coffee and exhaustion. We sat down, and I ordered 2 hot teas. The bakery owner, a round and smiling woman, brought us sweet bread without us asking. She had known Liam since he was a child. "How are you?" I asked him in a low voice. He shook his head. "I should have told you sooner. Much sooner. But I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. Or, worse, that it would hurt you so much you wouldn't know what to do." "Tell me everything," I told him. "Everything you know. Everything you found." Liam took out his phone and put it on the table. He started showing me photographs, legal documents with my forged signature, emails between Richard and Victoria talking about the house, about how much money they could get if they sold it, about how to convince me to sign. "Look at this one," Liam said with a trembling voice, zooming in on a message. "It's from 2 months ago." It was an email from Victoria to Richard. I read it slowly, feeling every word sticking in my chest like a knife. "Richard, your mother is being difficult with the papers. Maybe you should pressure her more. Tell her it's for her own good, that the house is too big for her. If that doesn't work, there are other options. My cousin the lawyer says we can declare that she is not mentally fit to manage her properties. We just need a couple of witnesses to say she is confused, forgetful. It wouldn't be hard. She's 70 years old. Nobody would question the narrative." I felt the air escaping my lungs. Declare that I was crazy, take away my legal capacity, lock me in some nursing home while they sold my house and spent the money on trips and luxuries. "There's more," Liam said. "I found a budget. They are planning a trip to Italy next year. 3 weeks, 5-star hotels, first-class flights. It costs $35,000. And I also found this." He showed me another document. It was a preliminary contract with a real estate agency. They had already appraised the house. $200,000. My whole life, my whole past, reduced to a number on a paper. "The real estate agent is a friend of Victoria's," Liam explained. "She already told him the house would be available by the end of this year. She promised him an extra commission if he found a quick buyer." My hands gripped the teacup so hard I thought it would break. "How did you find all this?" I asked. Liam lowered his gaze. 3 months ago, I went to their house to look for some books I had left there. They weren't home. I went into Dad's study to use the computer and print a college assignment. The computer was on and the email open. I saw your name in a message and I couldn't help it. I started reading, then I searched his files. I found everything. Entire folders dedicated to this. "Why didn't you tell me immediately?" "Because I needed to be sure," he said with a broken voice. "Because he's my father, Grandma. I needed to believe there was some explanation, that maybe I was misinterpreting. I waited. I watched them. I looked for some sign that this wasn't what it seemed, but I didn't find it. I only found more proof, more lies." He took my hand across the table. His eyes were full of tears. "When Victoria said that last night, about you not being important enough for the wedding, something broke inside me. I saw your face. I saw how you swallowed the pain, and I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. It doesn't matter if he's my father. What they are doing is wrong, completely wrong." I hugged him across the table. This boy, this young man who was supposed to be enjoying his life, his studies, his youth, was here with me, carrying the weight of a family betrayal. "Do you have copies of all this?" I asked him when we separated. "Yes, in 3 different places. A USB drive in my apartment, another in my locker at the university, and everything uploaded to a private cloud." "Good," I said. "That is good." We sat in silence for a moment. The noise of the bakery surrounded us. People ordering coffee, children laughing, life going on as if nothing were happening. "What are we going to do, Grandma?" Liam asked finally. I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that as a child looked at me with such innocence, expecting me to have all the answers. "We are going to need help," I said. "Legal help. Someone who understands these things." "I have a professor at the university," Liam said. "He teaches civil law. He's good. I could ask him if he knows someone." I shook my head. "No. I need someone who knows me. Someone I can trust completely." And then I remembered him. Arthur Vance. I hadn't thought of him in years. Maybe 15 years. We had been neighbors when Richard was little. Arthur was a lawyer. He worked for a firm downtown. His wife had died of cancer when his daughter was just 5 years old. He worked so much he could barely take care of her. I offered to help. I took care of that little girl for 3 years. I made her food, helped her with homework, took her to school when Arthur couldn't. He never charged me for the legal support he gave me when I had problems with the house mortgage after my husband's death. He told me it was the least he could do after everything I had done for his family. He had moved out of the neighborhood years ago. I had lost contact with him. But maybe I need to find someone, I told Liam. An old friend. His name is Arthur Vance. He was a lawyer. I don't know if he still practices or if he still lives in the city. Liam was already typing on his phone. Let me search. Do you know anything else about him? Where he worked? He worked for a firm called Vance and Associates, or something like that. It was his own business. Liam searched in silence for a few minutes. Then his face lit up. I found him. Arthur Vance, lawyer. He has an office downtown. He's semi-retired, but still does private consultations. Here is his number. He passed me the phone. I looked at the number on the screen. Would he remember me after so much time? Would he want to help me? There was only one way to know. Call, I said. Ask if we can go see him today. Liam dialed the number. He spoke with someone, probably a secretary. He explained it was urgent, that it was for his grandmother, that it was a delicate family matter. After a few minutes, he hung up. We can go at 3 in the afternoon, he said. The address is 243 Bolivar Street, 3rd floor. I looked at the clock on the bakery wall. It was 10 in the morning. We had 5 hours. I need to go home, I said. I need to find papers. The original property title, your grandfather's will, everything related to the house. I'm going with you, Liam said. No, you have classes. I don't care about classes. I'm accompanying you. I didn't argue. The truth is, I didn't want to be alone. Not in this moment. We walked back to my house. The sun was high now, and it was hot. My legs hurt, but I kept going. Liam walked beside me in silence, hands in his pockets. When we arrived, I found my old tin box where I kept all the important documents. It was on the highest shelf of the bedroom closet, behind the sheets I didn't use anymore. Liam had to get on a chair to get it down. We opened it on the kitchen table. Inside were all the papers of my life. The marriage certificate, my husband's death certificate, Richard's birth certificate, the property title of the house, with my husband's name in big letters, and my name underneath, the original deeds, the will. There were also old photos, my wedding, Richard as a baby, past Christmases, forgotten birthdays, a whole life stored in a tin box. Grandma, Liam said softly. Look at this. He was holding a letter. The handwriting was my husband's. I recognized it immediately. For Margaret, my love, the letter began. If you are reading this, it is because I am no longer with you. There are so many things I want to tell you. Thank you for these years. Thank you for giving me a son. Thank you for making this house a home. The house is yours, Margaret. Only yours. No one can take it from you. It is in your name as much as mine. Take care of it. Live in it. And if one day you decide to leave it, let it be because you want to, not because someone forces you. I love you. I will always love you. Tears ran down my cheeks without me being able to stop them. Liam was also crying. No one is going to take this house from you, Grandma, he said with a firm voice. I promise you. We put all the documents in a folder. Liam photographed them one by one with his phone, just in case. Then we sat down to wait for 3 in the afternoon. The phone rang again. Richard again. This time I answered. Mom, please, we have to talk. There is nothing to talk about. Richard. Yes, there is. Liam is confused. He misunderstood some documents. I can explain everything. Misunderstood. I repeated slowly. He misunderstood the part where you wanted to take my house, or the part where you planned to declare me crazy? Silence on the other end. Mom, don't call me again, I said. Not until you are ready to tell me the truth. The whole truth. I hung up before he could answer. Liam looked at me with something resembling respect, or maybe relief, as if he were finally seeing the woman I should have always been. At 2:30 we left for downtown. We took a bus that dropped us 2 blocks from Arthur's office. The building was old, but well maintained. We went up the stairs to the 3rd floor. The door had a plaque. Arthur Vance, Private Legal Consultancy. I knocked with my knuckles. A familiar voice told me to come in. And when I opened that door, I knew everything was about to change. Arthur Vance stood up when we entered his office. For a moment we stood looking at each other in silence. He had aged, of course. His hair was now completely white, and he had more wrinkles around his eyes, but his gaze was still the same. Clear, direct, honest. Margaret Marquez, he said with a smile that reached his eyes. How long has it been? Too long, Arthur. He came closer and hugged me. A genuine hug, one of those that feels safe. He smelled of coffee and that old cologne men of his generation wear. Come in, "Come in. And this young man must be your grandson." "Liam," I said. "Liam, this is Arthur Vance, an old friend of the family." They shook hands. Arthur invited us to sit in 2 chairs in front of his dark wood desk. The office was small but tidy. There were shelves full of law books, diplomas on the walls, a photo of a young woman in a silver frame. His daughter, I guessed. She wasn't the little girl I had cared for anymore. "Coffee? Tea?" Arthur offered. "No, thanks," I said. "We don't have much time and I need your help." Arthur sat down and clasped his hands on the desk. "Your call worried me. Liam mentioned it was urgent. Tell me what is happening." And I told him. Everything. From the first changes in Richard after meeting Victoria, to the humiliation of last night at the dinner, going through the documents Liam had found. I spoke for almost 20 minutes without stopping. Arthur listened in silence, nodding occasionally, taking notes in a notebook. When I finished, I felt exhausted. As if by saying it all out loud I had spent all my energy. Liam opened his phone and showed him the photographs of the documents. Arthur put on some reading glasses and examined every image with attention. His expression hardened as he advanced. "This is serious," he said finally, taking off his glasses. "Very serious. What your son and your daughter-in-law are trying to do is fraud, forgery of documents. And if they were really planning to declare you mentally incompetent without medical basis, that could be elder abuse. These are criminal charges, Margaret, not just civil." I felt a chill run down my back. Criminal. My son could go to jail. "I don't want to put him in jail," I said quickly. "I just want to stop them. I want them to leave me alone. I want to keep my house." Arthur nodded. "I understand. But you need to understand the gravity of the situation. They weren't just being cruel. They were committing crimes. And if you don't stop them now, they could try again. In another way, these people aren't going to stop because you ask them nicely to." He was right. I knew it. But he was my son. Despite everything, he was still my son. "What can I do?" I asked. Arthur leaned back in his chair and thought for a moment. "First, we need to secure your house. I am going to draft a sworn affidavit stating that you never authorized any property transfer. I am going to notify all the relevant registry offices that any document with your signature presented in the last 6 months must be considered fraudulent until proven otherwise. That is going to block any sale or transfer immediately." "How long will that take?" Liam asked. "I can have it ready by tomorrow morning. I have contacts in the registry offices. They will move fast if I explain the situation." "What else?" I asked. "Second, we need to document everything. Liam, those photographs you have are good, but we need more. We need access to the original email accounts, to the physical documents if possible. Do you think you could get them?" Liam bit his lip. "I could try. I still have keys to their house. They don't know I have them. But if they discover me, it is risky," admitted Arthur. "But it would be very useful. However, I am not going to ask you to do anything that puts you in danger. The photographs you already have might be enough." "I am going to do it," said Liam with determination. "Tonight, when they are asleep." "Liam, no," I started to say. "Grandma, I have to do it. For you. For the grandfather I never met, but whose house they are trying to steal. I have to do it." Arthur looked at both of us. "If you are going to do it carefully. Go in, get what you need, and get out. Don't stay longer than necessary. And if something goes wrong, you leave immediately. Understood?" Liam nodded. "Third," continued Arthur, "we need to think about the long term. Margaret, have you considered making a new will? One where you specify exactly what you want to happen to your property when you are no longer here." "I have a will," I said. "Old. Everything went to Richard. You need a new one. Urgently. Given what is happening, I would recommend considering other options. Liam, for example. Or dividing the property in ways that protect your interests." The idea of disinheriting Richard hurt me. But it made sense. If something happened to me tomorrow, everything I had would go directly into the hands of the person who was trying to steal it from me. "I can draft a new will too," said Arthur. "No cost. Consider it a favor for all those years you took care of my daughter." "Arthur, don't argue. Margaret, you helped me when I needed it most. Now let me help you." I felt the tears threatening to come out again. but I held them back. I needed to keep my head clear. There is a fourth thing, said Arthur, his tone becoming more serious. You need to consider the possibility of making this public. Very public. What do you mean? Your grandson's wedding is in 2 weeks, right? Yes. Well, he was my grandson. Now I don't know if he will go ahead after last night. He is going to go ahead, said Arthur with certainty. People like your daughter-in-law don't cancel expensive weddings. She has too much pride, too much emotional and social investment. She is going to go ahead, probably pretending nothing happened. And what does the wedding have to do with it? Arthur leaned forward. Margaret, these documents Liam found are explosive. But using them in court could take months, maybe years. Your son's lawyers could delay, appeal, complicate everything. Meanwhile, they would keep trying to find ways to take the house. So we use the most powerful weapon there is. Public shame, social pressure. Imagine this. The wedding is at its highest point. All of Victoria's important friends are there. The family, your son's work colleagues. And in that moment, the truth is revealed. Not in a courtroom where no one sees them, but in front of everyone they want to impress. Liam straightened in his chair. Like what I did last night, but multiplied by 100. Exactly. But organized, planned, with irrefutable evidence. Not just to embarrass them, but to ensure they can never try something like this again. Because everyone will know, and no one will want to be an accomplice. The idea terrified and thrilled me at the same time. Part of me wanted to run from all of it. Disappear, let them keep everything, and just go far away, where no one could hurt me anymore. But another part, a part that had been asleep for too long, wanted justice. I wanted Richard to look into the eyes of his friends and see the disappointment. I wanted Victoria to feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused me. How would we do it? I asked in a low voice. Arthur smiled. It was a sad but determined smile. Let me think about the details. But the basic idea is simple. We document everything. We prepare a clear presentation of the facts, and at the precise moment, we reveal it. Maybe during the speeches, maybe before. Depends on how solid our evidence is. We would need all the guests to see it, said Liam. Not just hear it. They would need to see it to believe it. Exactly. That's why those original documents are so important. We can project them, show the emails, the forged signatures compared to your real signature. Everything. What if Richard simply leaves? I asked. What if he runs away and we never hear from him again? That is a possibility, admitted Arthur. But honestly, Margaret, if that is the reaction he has, do you really want that person in your life? A son who steals from his mother and then flees when discovered is not a son. He is a stranger who shares your blood. His words were harsh, but true. We spent the next hour planning. Arthur took detailed notes. We made a list of everything we needed. Liam promised to get the documents that night. Arthur would start the legal procedures early tomorrow. I would have to stay away from Richard and Victoria until we were ready. Don't answer their calls, warned Arthur. Don't meet with them. Don't give them any hint that we are preparing something. They need to believe they won, that they scared you so much you gave up. I can do that, I said. I have spent years being invisible. I can do it a little longer. When we got up to leave, Arthur took my hands. Margaret, I want you to understand something. What you are doing requires courage. A lot of courage. You are going to face your own son. It is going to hurt, probably more than it hurts now, but it is the right thing, and I am going to be here with you every step. Okay, I nodded, unable to speak because of the knot in my throat. And one more thing, he added. When all this ends, no matter how it ends, I want you to consider something. Consider the possibility of starting over. Not necessarily moving or changing your life drastically, but starting to live for yourself. Not for your son, not for your grandson, for you, Margaret, the woman. Not just the mother or the grandmother. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to do it? I had no answer for that, because I didn't remember the last time. Maybe I never had. We left the office when the sun was starting to set. The sky was tinged with orange and pink. Liam and I walked in silence for a while. Are you sure about this, Grandma? He asked finally. No, I admitted. I am terrified. But I am going to do it anyway. He took my arm. then we'll do it together. That night, after Liam left to complete his mission of getting the documents, I stayed alone in my house. I took out an old photo of Richard. He was maybe 5 years old in that photo. He was smiling, showing a tooth he had just lost. I was behind him, hugging him. I looked at that photo for a long time, trying to find in that child the man he had become, trying to understand at what moment I had lost him. And then I put the photo away. I put it back in the tin box with all the other memories. Because Arthur was right. I needed to start living for myself. And that meant letting go of the child in the photo and accepting that the man who existed now had made his own decisions that would have consequences. Liam arrived at my house past 2 a.m. He was pale and shaking. He had a thick folder under his arm and a USB drive in his hand. He collapsed onto the living room sofa, as if his legs could no longer hold him. "I got it," he said with a hoarse voice. "I got everything." I made him a hot tea while he caught his breath. His hands were shaking so much he had to hold the cup with both hands. "Tell me," I said, sitting next to him. I waited until 12. The lights in their room went out at 11:30. I waited half an hour more to be sure. I went in through the back door. "I have the key they gave me years ago when they still trusted me." He paused. He drank a sip of tea. The house was dark, silent. I went up the stairs slowly, avoiding the 3rd step because it creaks. I went straight to Dad's study. The door was closed, but not locked. I turned on the desk lamp, the one with dim light, and I started searching. "Did you hear anything?" No one woke up. Once I heard footsteps. I hid behind the door. It was Victoria going to the bathroom. I waited 5 minutes after she went back to her room. My heart was beating so fast I thought they were going to hear me. He opened the folder on the coffee table. They were all there. The original documents, preliminary sales contracts, printed emails, notes written by hand by Richard with numbers, calculations, plans. There was even a draft of a letter to a doctor, asking him to evaluate my increasing mental confusion and loss of capacity to handle my own affairs. I felt nauseous reading that letter. Richard had written it, his handwriting, his words. My own son trying to convince a doctor to declare me crazy. "There's more," said Liam, plugging the USB drive into his laptop. I copied all the files from his computer related to this, spreadsheets where they made budgets, complete WhatsApp conversations between them. And I found this. He opened a video file. It was a recording of a video call between Victoria and someone else. An elegant woman, about 50 years old, sitting in a luxurious office. "She is Claire," explained Liam, Victoria's cousin. "She is also a lawyer. Look at what she says." He played the video. Victoria's voice sounded clear. "Claire, I need your advice. We have a problem with Richard's mother. She owns a property we need to liquidate. But the old woman is being difficult. She doesn't want to sign." "How old is she?" asked Claire. 70 years old. Lives alone. Lately, she has been forgetful, confused. Or at least that's what we can say. "I understand," said Claire with a smile that chilled my blood. "Look, there is a legal route. You can request a mental capacity evaluation. If a judge determines she is not in a condition to manage her properties, you can get legal power of attorney over her. Then you can do whatever you want with the house." How hard is it to get that? With age in her favor, and a couple of testimonies from family or neighbors saying she is losing her mind, not very hard. "How much is the property worth?" $200,000 approximately. Claire whistled. "Worth the effort then. I'm going to send you information on how to proceed. But remember, Victoria, you need to build a solid case. Document every time she forgets something, every time she gets confused. If necessary, exaggerate a little. Judges see these cases all the time. An old woman living alone, concerned family. It is a story that sells itself." The video ended there. I stared at the blank screen, feeling my world crumble a little more. "This was 4 months ago," said Liam in a low voice. "They have been planning this for 4 months. Maybe more." I couldn't speak. The betrayal was so deep, so calculated, that it took away my words. Liam closed the laptop and took my hands. "Grandma, with all this, Arthur can have them arrested. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. It is elder abuse. It is years in prison." "I don't want them to go to prison," I said automatically. "Why not?" After what they did to you? After what they planned to do to you? Because he is my son, I said. And my voice cracked. Because even though he betrayed me, even though he hurt me, he is still my son. And I can't be the one who puts him in jail. Liam hugged me while I cried. I cried for everything, for the years of sacrifice, for the unrequited love, for the illusion of family I had built in my mind, for that 5-year-old boy in the photo who didn't exist anymore. So, what do you want to do? Liam asked when my tears subsided. I want them to stop, I said, wiping my face. I want them to give me back my peace. I want everyone to know the truth, but I don't want to destroy them completely. The wedding, said Liam. Like Arthur said, we reveal it at the wedding, in front of everyone. We shame them so much they can never try something like this again. But we don't call the police, at least not yet. I nodded. We need to show them that we know everything, that we have the proof, that if they ever come near me or my house again, then yes, we will go to the authorities. It is risky, warned Liam. They could flee. They could hire better lawyers. They could find ways to attack us. I know. But it is what I want to do. Liam stayed thinking. Okay. Then we need a perfect plan. Every detail has to be coordinated. We can't leave them any way out. We spent the rest of the night planning. Liam made lists on his laptop. I made coffee after coffee to keep us awake. When the sun started to rise, we had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was solid. Point 1. Arthur would continue with the legal procedures to protect my house. That was non-negotiable. Point 2. Liam would create a presentation with all the evidence. Scanned documents, emails, Claire's video. Everything organized clearly and chronologically. It would have to be impossible to deny. Point 3. We needed access to the audio and video system of the wedding. Liam would investigate who was the technical person in charge and look for a way to ensure our presentation could be played at the right moment. Point 4. I had to maintain the appearance of normality. If Richard or Victoria called, I had to sound defeated, tired, willing to yield. They had to believe they had won. Point 5. The day of the wedding, I would go. Not as the guest of honor, as they had made clear, but as a witness, as the woman who was about to recover her dignity. At 7 in the morning, Liam went to sleep for a few hours before going to the university. I stayed alone, looking at all the documents scattered on my table. Richard called at 9. This time I answered. Mom, his voice sounded relieved. Thank you for answering. We need to talk, please. I am tired, Richard, I said. And I didn't have to fake the tiredness in my voice. Very tired. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The wedding thing was a misunderstanding. Victoria was stressed. She said things she didn't mean. Liam said you wanted to take my house. Silence. Then, Mom, Liam is confused. He found some old papers, documents from when we were exploring options to help you. Nothing definitive, nothing bad. We just wanted to make sure you were taken care of. The lie came out so easily from his mouth. So smooth, so convincing. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, maybe I would have believed him. I don't want to talk about this now, I said. Okay. But Mom, the wedding is in 2 weeks. Victoria and I talked. We want you to come, to the full ceremony. It was a mistake to exclude you, a terrible mistake. Please, say you will come. Ah, there it was. They needed me to go. They needed everything to look normal in front of their guests. A happy family, no scandals, no problems. I'll think about it, I said. Please, Mom. It would mean a lot to us. To Liam, too. The mention of Liam made me angry, as if he were on their side, as if it wasn't Liam who had exposed them. I'll let you know, I said, and hung up before he could keep talking. My hands were shaking. Acting was harder than I thought. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him I knew everything, that I had seen every document, every email, every malicious plan, but I couldn't. Not yet. Arthur arrived at my house at noon with a briefcase full of papers. It's done, he announced. I filed the affidavit this morning. Your house is protected. Any attempt at sale or transfer will be blocked immediately and reported to the authorities. How long will that last? Indefinitely, until you revoke it yourself. I also drafted the new will. Read it calmly. If you agree, we can sign it today with appropriate witnesses. I read the will. It was simple and clear. The house would be Liam's when I died. Richard would receive nothing of the property, although there was a small amount of money I would leave him. $5,000, a symbolic farewell. This is fine, I said. Are you sure? It is an important decision. I am sure. We signed the will with 2 neighbors as witnesses. Betty and Frank came without asking questions, although I saw the curiosity in their eyes. Arthur kept the original document in his safe. Now, said Arthur, let's talk about the wedding. Liam sent me the evidence this morning. It is excellent work, very complete. With this, we can build a devastating presentation. We spent the afternoon organizing everything. Arthur knew someone who knew the audio and video technician Victoria had hired for the wedding. For a sum of $500, that technician would give us access to the system. We could play our presentation on the big screens Victoria had rented to show photos of the couple. The ideal moment, said Arthur, is during the speeches. Typically, the father of the bride speaks, then the best man, then some friends. That is when everyone is seated, paying attention. That is when we project the truth. What if they try to turn off the screens? I asked. The technician is going to lock the remote controls. Once the presentation starts, it won't be able to be stopped until it finishes. They are going to have to watch everything. How long will it last? 10 minutes. 10 minutes of irrefutable proof. 10 minutes to destroy the illusion Richard and Victoria had built. 10 minutes to show the world who they really were. I felt sick, nervous, terrified. But there was also something else, something I hadn't felt for years. Power. The next week was strange. Richard called me 2 more times. Each time I told him I would go to the wedding, that everything was fine, that I just needed time to process what had happened. He sounded relieved. Victoria even sent me a message saying she had reserved a seat for me in the 2nd row of the church. How generous. Liam came and went from my house, bringing updates. The presentation was almost ready. The technician was coordinated. Everything was falling into place. 3 days before the wedding, I went to a store downtown. I bought a new dress. Nothing extravagant, but it was pretty. Wine-colored, with an elegant cut. I also bought new shoes and got my hair done at a salon. The woman at the salon looked at me surprised. Mrs. Marquez, you look beautiful. Is there a special occasion? Yes, I said, looking at my reflection in the mirror. Very special, because I was going to go to that wedding, but not as the humiliated grandmother who hides in the shadows. I was going to go as Margaret Marquez, the woman who had survived her husband's death, who had raised a son alone, who had worked until her hands bled, who had loved without expecting anything in return. I was going to go as the woman who was no longer afraid. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright. I got up early. Although I had barely slept, I had dreamed of my husband. In the dream, he was standing in the doorway of our house, smiling, telling me it was time to defend myself, that he would be proud of me. I showered calmly, letting the hot water relax my tense muscles. I put on the new wine-colored dress, the shiny shoes. I put on light makeup, something I hadn't done in years. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked like a different woman, stronger, more sure. Liam arrived at 10 in the morning. He was wearing his dark suit, freshly ironed. He had circles under his eyes, but his eyes shone with determination. Ready, Grandma? He asked. Ready? I answered, although my stomach was in knots. Arthur is already at the venue. The technician confirmed this morning. Everything is prepared. The presentation will play automatically at 3:15 in the afternoon, right after the best man's speech. And if something goes wrong? Liam showed me his phone. I have a backup. If the system fails, I can project it from here. And Arthur has another backup on his tablet. It cannot fail, Grandma. We won't allow it. I nodded, trying to calm my nerves. The wedding was at an event garden north of the city. An expensive place, with water fountains, old trees, and perfectly cut lawns. We arrived at 11:30. The ceremony would start at noon. There were people everywhere, women in elegant dresses and big hats, men in dark suits, waiters serving champagne in tall glasses. Victoria had done everything big. There must have been at least 200 people. No one greeted me when I entered. Some people looked at me with curiosity. Others simply didn't see me. I was invisible again, but this time I didn't care. Today was not about being seen. It was about being heard. I found my place in the second row of white chairs placed in front of the altar. Liam sat next to me. 2 rows in front of us were Richard and some family members I barely recognized. Distant cousins, friends of Victoria, people who mattered more than me. Richard turned around and saw me. For a second, something crossed his face. Surprise? Relief? Guilt? Whatever it was, it disappeared quickly. He waved at me and smiled. A fake smile, plastic. I returned the smile. Just as fake. At 12 sharp the music started. The wedding march. Everyone stood up. Victoria appeared at the end of the aisle on her father's arm. She looked beautiful. I couldn't deny that. Her dress was white with delicate lace. She wore her hair in an elegant bun with small white flowers intertwined. She looked like she came out of a magazine. She walked slowly, smiling at each side. Her father gave her away to my grandson. Liam, the groom. Not my Liam. The other Liam. The one who was about to marry this woman. The one who knew nothing of what was to come. The ceremony was long. The priest spoke about love, commitment, family. Every word hurt me. Family. As if they knew anything about family. As if they hadn't tried to destroy mine. Vows were exchanged. Rings, the kiss, applause. They were married now. Victoria radiated happiness. Richard cried with emotion. My grandson Liam, the one sitting next to me, squeezed my hand tightly. 3 more hours, he whispered. Just 3 more hours. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the reception area. There were round tables with white tablecloths, centerpieces with pink and white flowers, lights hanging from the trees. It was like a fairy tale, perfect, flawless, fake. They seated me at a table in the back, near the restrooms. Liam sat with me. No one else at our table. As if we were contagious. Arthur appeared a few minutes later. He looked elegant in his gray suit and black tie. He sat with us without saying a word. He just nodded. Everything was in place. The food started to be served. Salads, fish, steak, elaborate desserts. I barely tasted a bite. My stomach was so tight I couldn't swallow. Liam didn't eat much either. Arthur, on the other hand, ate calmly, as if it were a normal wedding. Richard came to our table during the second course. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. Mom, I'm so glad you came. Truly. It's my grandson's wedding, I said softly. Where else would I be? I know things have been tense, but this is a new beginning. For everyone, after today, we can leave everything behind and be a family again. Family, that word again. I hope so, I said. And it wasn't a lie. I hoped that after today, after everything came to light, we could find some way to move forward. Although I didn't know what that would look like, Richard left to attend to other guests. Victoria did not come over. She didn't even look at me. She was too busy being the center of attention, posing for photos, hugging her friends, laughing loudly. The hours passed slowly. Every minute seemed like an eternity. I looked at my watch. 2:30. 45 minutes left. The waiters cleared the plates. They brought coffee and tea. The lights dimmed slightly. In the front of the hall, there were 2 giant screens. Until now, they had been showing photos of the couple, Liam as a child, Victoria as a child. Photos of them together. No photos of me. Not one. Not a single one. The master of ceremonies took the microphone. A young man with an animated voice. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the speeches. First, let's hear a few words from the father of the bride, the architect Alonso Ruiz. Alonso went up to the small stage. He spoke for 10 minutes about his daughter, about how proud he was, about the wonderful man she had chosen, about the bright future that awaited them. Everything was nice. Everything was perfect. Then it was the best man's turn. A friend of Liam, the groom. He told funny stories from college, about trips, about adventures. People laughed, applauded. My Liam squeezed my hand. Now, he whispered. The best man finished his speech. Applause filled the room. The master of ceremonies took the microphone again. Thank you very much. And now, we have a special presentation for... The screens flickered. The image changed. It wasn't photos of the happy couple anymore. Now, they showed a document. The property title of my house. In big letters it said, The truth about the Marquez family. The room went silent. The master of ceremonies stopped mid-sentence. Victoria stood up abruptly. Richard stared at the screens with his mouth open. Arthur's voice began to play through the speakers. Calm, professional, authoritative. Good afternoon. My name is Arthur Vance, attorney at law. I regret interrupting this celebration, but there is information that the guests present need to know. Documents appeared on the screens. One by one. The fake contracts with my forged signature. The emails between Richard and Victoria talking about selling my house. The calculations of how much money they would get. Margaret Marquez, the mother of the groom and grandmother of the former groom, owns a property valued at $200,000. During the last 6 months, her son Richard Marquez and his now wife Victoria Ruiz have been attempting to steal that property through fraud. Murmurs began to fill the room. People looking at the screens, then looking at me, then looking at Richard and Victoria. Here you can see, Arthur's voice continued, emails where they discuss how to forge Mrs. Marquez's signature. Here, a budget for a trip to Italy costing $35,000 that they planned to finance with the money from the sale of the house. The screens showed every detail. It was impossible not to see it, impossible to deny it. But there is more, said Arthur, and his voice became harder. When Mrs. Marquez refused to sign the documents, Richard and Victoria conspired to declare her mentally incompetent. They planned to use doctors and lawyers to take away her autonomy, her home, her dignity. Now there were audible reactions, gasps, exclamations of surprise. Some people stood up. The screens showed the video of the call between Victoria and Claire. Her lawyer cousin explaining how they could take my house by declaring me crazy. Victoria laughing, planning, calculating. The video played in full. 2 minutes of clear and irrefutable evidence of their intentions. When it finished, the silence was absolute. 200 people looking at Victoria and Richard with a mixture of shock, disgust, and horror. Victoria was completely pale. Richard had his hands over his face. All this evidence, continued Arthur, has been presented to the corresponding authorities. Mrs. Marquez's property is now legally protected. Any additional attempt at fraud will result in criminal charges. The screens showed one last image, a photo of me, from years ago. I was holding Richard when he was a baby, smiling, full of hope, full of love. Margaret Marquez worked her whole life to give her son a future. She sold her jewelry, worked double shifts, sacrificed everything. And this is how her son decided to repay her. The presentation ended. The screens went black. The lights in the hall turned on completely. Everyone was looking at me. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on me. I stood up slowly. My legs were shaking, but they held me up. I walked toward the front of the hall. Step by step. People moved aside to let me pass. No one said anything. I reached where Richard and Victoria were. My son couldn't look me in the eyes. Victoria had tears running through her perfectly applied makeup. "Mom," Richard said with a broken voice. It's not what it looks like." "You finished for him, Richard," I said. "That's what you were going to say." He didn't answer. I looked at Victoria. She looked at me with pure hate. Not even in this moment, exposed in front of everyone, could she fake regret. "Your mother is not important enough for our wedding," I repeated her words slowly. "That was what you said. And you were right. I am not important. Not to you. But my house was important. My money was important. I was worth nothing. But what I had was worth something." "Margaret," started Victoria, but I raised my hand to stop her. "No. You don't have the right to speak. No more." I turned around to face all the guests. Wealthy people, successful professionals, Victoria's important friends, Richard's colleagues. "I am sorry for ruining your celebration," I said, and my voice sounded stronger than I expected. "But you needed to know what kind of people you are celebrating with. You needed to know the truth." An older woman in the front row started clapping, then another person, and another. Soon, half the room was clapping. Clapping for me. Richard sank into his chair with his hands over his face. Victoria was screaming something, but no one was listening to her. Victoria's father was trying to calm her down, but she pushed him. Liam, my grandson, arrived at my side and took my arm. Arthur appeared on the other side. "It is time to go," said Arthur softly. I nodded. I had said what I had to say. I had done what I had to do. We walked toward the exit. People kept clapping. Some people touched my shoulder as I passed. A woman told me, "Well done," in a low voice. Another hugged me and whispered, "You are very brave." When we got out into the open air, I felt like I could finally breathe. The weight I had been carrying for months, years maybe, had lifted. "How do you feel, Grandma?" asked Liam. I thought about the question. How did I feel? "Free," I said finally. "I feel free." The days after the wedding were strange. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Unknown numbers. Messages from people who had been at the wedding. Some congratulated me. Others asked for details. Some simply wanted to know how I was. I didn't answer any. Except one. It was from Betty, my cousin. She had been at the wedding, sitting at some table I didn't manage to see. Her message was simple. "Margaret, I am proud of you. Come for coffee when you are ready." I went to her house 3 days later. She lived 6 blocks from mine, in a small house with a garden full of flowers. She received me with a long and tight hug. "Everyone saw it," she said as we sat in her kitchen. "Everyone is talking about this. Victoria's friends, her colleagues from work, even people who weren't even there but found out from others. What do they say? That you did the right thing. That Richard and Victoria are wretches. That they deserve to be exposed like that." Betty poured me coffee and sat in front of me. Victoria resigned from her job, or she was fired, I'm not sure. Apparently her bosses didn't want to be associated with someone who tries to steal from her elderly mother-in-law. I felt a pang of something. Satisfaction? Guilt? I wasn't sure. And Richard? He's still working, as far as I know, but I heard he is being investigated internally. The company where he works has strict ethics codes. They don't like this at all. I drank my coffee in silence. I had wanted justice, not destruction. But maybe both things came together. "Richard has tried to contact you," asked Betty. 20 times. I don't answer. "And what are you going to do? Are you going to talk to him eventually?" "I don't know. Maybe. Someday. When I'm ready. If I am ever ready." My phone vibrated. It was Liam, my grandson. "Grandma, I need to see you. Can I come by your house this afternoon?" "Yes," I replied. Liam arrived at 5 in the afternoon. He brought a pizza box and sodas. We sat in the living room, as we had done so many times before. "There is news," he said after eating a slice. "The marriage is being annulled." "What?" "Liam, my namesake, is asking for an annulment." Apparently his parents convinced him. They said the marriage started with fraud and deceit, that Victoria hid important information from them before the wedding. "Poor boy," I said, and I meant it. He hadn't done anything wrong except fall in love with the wrong person. Victoria is furious. She is blaming everyone. You, me, Dad, for being so obvious in his plans. But mostly you, I imagine. Liam left his pizza and looked at me seriously. "Grandma, there is something else. Dad wants to see you. He asked me to tell you. He says he needs to talk to you, that he needs to explain." My heart tightened. "What did you tell him?" "That I would ask you, but that I wouldn't pressure you. It is your decision." I thought about Richard, about the boy he had been, about the man he had become, about everything that had passed between us. "Tell him I'm not ready," I said finally. "Maybe I never will be, but if one day I change my mind, I will look for him. Not him, for me." Liam nodded. "I'll tell him." "How are you?" I asked him. "With all this, it must be hard for you too." "It's weird," he admitted. "He's my father. Despite everything, he's still my father. But I also know what he did was wrong. Completely wrong. And I can't pretend it didn't happen just because he's my blood." "You are a good man, Liam. Better than your father. Better than me at your age. I learned from the best," he said, smiling slightly. That night, after Liam left, I sat in my armchair. The same armchair where my husband used to read. The same one where I had spent so many nights alone. But tonight, I didn't feel alone. I felt accompanied by something different. By myself. I thought about Arthur and his words. About starting to live for me. About doing things because I wanted to do them, not because someone else needed me to do them. When was the last time I had done something just for me? When was the last time I had thought about what I wanted, not what my son needed or my grandson expected. I couldn't remember. I looked around my house, the walls I knew by heart, the furniture that had been there for decades, the photos, the memories. It was my house. No one had taken it from me. No one would take it from me. But maybe it was time to think about what I wanted to do with it, with my life, with the time I had left, because for the first time in 70 years, that time was completely mine. The next day, I received a letter. It was from Richard, handwritten. The handwriting shook in some parts. "Mom," it began, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand me. I only hope you read this." The letter continued for 3 pages. Richard explained how it all started, the debts he had, the pressure to maintain a lifestyle he couldn't afford, Victoria pushing him, telling him his mother had more than she needed, that it would be easy, that I wouldn't even notice. "I convinced myself I was helping you," he wrote, "that the house was too big for you, that you would be better off in a smaller place. I lied to myself until I almost believed it." The letter ended with an apology. Long, detailed, probably sincere. "I don't ask you to forgive me. I only ask that one day, maybe, you can remember me as something more than the son who betrayed you, as the boy you loved, as the person I was before I lost myself." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't answer it either. Maybe one day I would be ready to answer. Maybe not. For now, I had other things to think about. I had a life to start living. 2 weeks after the wedding, Arthur came to visit me with news. He sat in my living room with a cup of tea and a folder full of documents. "Margaret, we have to talk about the legal consequences," he said with his professional but kind tone. "Richard and Victoria received formal notifications. If they attempt any action against you or your property in the future, they will face immediate criminal charges. That includes approaching you without your consent. They agree. They have no choice. They signed the documents yesterday. There is also something else." Arthur took some papers out of the folder. "Richard is offering compensation, $50,000 as an apology and acknowledgement of the damage caused." I looked at the papers without touching them. $50,000. A quarter of what my house was worth. A fraction of what they had planned to steal from me. "I don't want his money," I said. "Margaret, think about it. It is money that belongs to you by right, for everything they put you through. You could use it to fix the house, to travel, for anything you want. If I accept that money, I feel like I'm putting a price on my pain, as if $50,000 could erase what they did." Arthur nodded slowly. "I understand. But consider this. Refusing the money changes nothing. It doesn't make Richard feel less guilty. It only leaves you without additional resources you could use." I thought about his words. He was right, as always. "Okay," I said finally. "I accept the money, but I don't want it now. Put it in a separate account. Maybe one day I'll use it, or maybe I'll leave it to Liam in my will. However you want, I'll take care of everything." After Arthur left, I stayed thinking about the money, about what it represented. It wasn't a real apology. Money could never be an apology. But it was an acknowledgement, an admission of guilt that Richard could never deny. The days passed faster now. Liam came to visit me twice a week. Sometimes he brought his college books and studied at my kitchen table while I cooked. Other times we just sat to talk about everything and nothing. "Grandma," he told me one afternoon while we were having coffee, "I've been thinking about something. Why don't you do something you've always wanted to do? Something you could never do because you were busy taking care of others." "Like what?" "I don't know. You tell me. What is something you always dreamed of doing?" The question took me by surprise. No one had asked me that ever. Not even I had asked myself that. "When I was young," I said slowly. "Before I got married, I wanted to learn to paint. I liked colors, the way you could create something from nothing. But I never had time or money for classes. And then, well, life got in the way." "Then learn now," said Liam, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "Take classes, buy paints, do it." I'm 70 years old. Liam, it's too late to start something like that. Who says it's too late? Who invented that rule? If you want to paint, paint. Age has nothing to do with it. His words stayed with me. That night I searched online for painting classes for adults. There was a workshop 20 minutes from my house. Classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoon. The cost was $50 a month. I signed up before I could convince myself not to. My first class was uncomfortable. I was the oldest in the group by at least 20 years. The other students were young, sure of themselves, talking about things I didn't understand. I felt out of place, but then the teacher, a woman named Sarah, about 50 years old with hair full of paint stains, approached me. "First time, right?" she asked with a warm smile. "Yes. I don't know if I should be here. Do you want to learn to paint?" "Yes." "Then you should be here. It's that simple." She gave me a blank canvas, brushes, and a palette of colors. "Today just play with the colors. Don't think, just feel." I spent 2 hours mixing colors, blue with yellow creating green, red with white creating pink. I didn't paint anything specific, just spots and lines, but when I finished, I felt different, lighter, as if something inside me had breathed for the first time in years. I continued going to classes. Every week I improved a little. My paintings weren't good, but they were mine. Sarah said I had a good eye for colors, that I should trust my instinct more. One afternoon, after class, Sarah asked me if I wanted to have a coffee. We went to a cafe near the workshop. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said while we waited for our drinks. "Go ahead. You've been coming to classes for a month, but there is something in you, a sadness, or maybe not sadness, something deeper. Are you okay?" I didn't expect the question, and less from someone I barely knew. But something in her way of asking, without judgment, without morbid curiosity, made me want to answer. I told her. Not everything, but enough. The betrayal, the humiliation, the wedding, the public exposure. Sarah listened in silence, nodding occasionally. "It must have been very hard," she said when I finished. "But you did it. You defended yourself. That requires a type of strength that most people never have to develop. I don't feel strong. Most of the time, I feel tired, old, alone. Strength doesn't always feel like strength. Sometimes it feels like survival, like simply getting up every day and moving forward." Sarah took a sip of her coffee. "And as for being alone, well, being alone is not the same as feeling lonely. You can be surrounded by people and feel completely lonely, or you can be alone and feel complete." Her words resonated in me for days. A month after starting painting classes, I received an unexpected call. It was from a woman who had been at the wedding. She introduced herself as Mrs. Henderson, a friend of Victoria's mother. "Mrs. Marquez, I know this is unusual, but I need to talk to you. Could we meet?" My first instinct was to say no, but something in her voice made me hesitate. "What do you want to talk about?" "About something that happened in my family, something similar to what happened to you, and how your bravery gave me the courage to face it." We met in a downtown cafe 2 days later. Mrs. Henderson was an elegant woman of about 60, with perfectly cut gray hair and intelligent eyes. "My son," she began without preamble, "has been managing my money for 5 years. After my husband died, I gave him power over my accounts because I thought he was younger, more capable. But lately I have noticed inconsistencies. Money missing. Bills without explanation. Do you think he is stealing from you?" I didn't know for sure, until I saw what you did at that wedding, until I saw how you exposed the truth without fear. It made me wonder why I was waiting, why I was afraid to ask questions, to demand answers. "And what did you do?" "I hired an auditor. He found that my son has been diverting almost $120,000 over 3 years. Fake investments, invented expenses, everything documented now. I am so sorry." "Don't be sorry. I came to thank you. If it hadn't been for you, for your bravery, I would still be letting them steal from me. I would still be the naive mother who blindly trusts her son." We stayed talking for 2 hours, sharing stories, sharing pain, but also sharing hope. The hope that it wasn't too late to reclaim our lives. When we said goodbye, Mrs. Henderson hugged me. Women like us need to remember that our kindness is not weakness, that our trust is not stupidity, that we deserve dignity. That night, sitting in my house, I thought about all the women like Mrs. Henderson. Like me. Women who had given everything, who had trusted completely, who had been betrayed by the people they loved most. How many more were there? How many were suffering in silence, believing they had no choice? an idea began to form in my mind. Maybe what happened to me could serve something bigger. Maybe my story could help other women find their own voice. I called Liam that night. "Grandma, are you okay?" "It's 11 at night. I'm fine. Better than fine." "Liam, I need your help with something important, whatever you need. I want to tell my story, publicly, not just what happened at the wedding, but everything, from the beginning, so other women know they are not alone, that they can defend themselves, that it is never too late." There was a silence on the other end. "Grandma," Liam said finally, with an excited voice. "That is incredible. How do you want to do it?" "I don't know yet. Maybe a blog, or social media, or interviews. You are young. You know about these things. We can do it all. We can create a complete platform. Your story deserves to be heard, Grandma. Not just by women like you, but by everyone." That night I went to sleep with a feeling I hadn't had in years. Purpose, direction, a reason to wake up every morning that went beyond simply surviving. My life had not ended with Richard's betrayal. It was just beginning. 6 months after the wedding, my life was completely different. Liam helped me create a blog. We called it "It's Never Too Late." I wrote my full story, every detail, every betrayal, every moment of pain, and every moment of triumph. The response was overwhelming. In 2 weeks I had 1,000 comments. In a month, 10,000. Women from everywhere writing to me, telling me their own stories, some worse than mine, others just beginning to suspect something was wrong. A 65-year-old woman wrote to me. "My daughter asked me to sign my house over to her name, in case something happened to me. After reading your story, I hired a lawyer. Thank you for saving me." Another of 72. "My children put me in a nursing home against my will and sold my apartment. Thanks to your blog, I found legal help. Now I am back in my home." Every message broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Every story reminded me why I had decided to speak. Liam and I started making videos. He recorded while I spoke in front of the camera. At first it was uncomfortable. I looked old, tired, but Liam said that was exactly what people needed to see. A real woman. Not an actress, not a model, just Margaret Marquez, with her wrinkles and her trembling voice and her truth. The videos went viral. One where I talked about how to forgive oneself for trusting the wrong people had 3 million views. Another about how to start over after 70 had more than 5 million. Journalists started calling. They wanted interviews. They wanted my story to appear on television, in magazines, on podcasts. At first I said no to everything. It was too much attention, too much exposure. But Arthur convinced me. "Margaret, you have a platform. You have influence. Use it. Change laws. Help other women, not just with words, but with actions." So I accepted some interviews. I appeared on a national morning show. The host treated me with respect and dignity. She asked me about my story, but also about my paintings, about my new life, about my future plans. "What would you say to other women going through something similar?" she asked. "That their silence does not protect them, that their kindness is not weakness, that they deserve dignity, respect, and love, and that never is it too late to defend themselves." After that program, my phone didn't stop ringing for days. Elder rights organizations wanted me to speak at their events. Women's groups invited me to give talks. A publisher offered me a book deal. A book. Me, Margaret Marquez, retired seamstress of 70 years, writing a book. I said yes. It took me 4 months to write it. Liam helped me with the technology. Arthur reviewed the legal parts. Sarah, my painting teacher, created the cover illustrations. The book was called My Name Is No Longer Yours. It was published 6 months after starting to write it. The first week it sold 50,000 copies. The second week, 100,000. The profits I donated to a fund we created to help older women in situations of financial or family abuse. In all this time, Richard had not contacted me again. Not directly. But I knew through Liam that he had read the blog, that he had seen the videos, that he had bought the book. "What did he say?" I asked Liam one afternoon. "That he was proud of you, that he never thought you had that strength, that he wished he had been a better son." "And what did you tell him?" "That it was too late to be a better son. but that maybe it wasn't too late to be a better man. A year after the wedding, I received a letter from Richard. Not the first since that initial apology, but the most significant. "Mom," he wrote, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I have seen how you have blossomed without me, how you have helped hundreds of women, how your pain became purpose, and I have realized that the best thing I can do for you is leave you in peace. Not out of cowardice, but out of respect. Victoria and I divorced. I am in therapy. I am trying to understand how I became that person. How could I do that to you? I don't have answers yet, but I am searching. I love you. Mom, I have always loved you, even though I never knew how to show it correctly. Richard." I read the letter 3 times. Then I kept it with the first one. Maybe one day I would answer him. Maybe one day we could have a conversation. But that day was not today. Today I had other priorities. My house didn't feel empty anymore. Tuesdays and Thursdays I went to painting classes. Mondays and Wednesdays I gave talks at community centers. Fridays Liam came to dinner. Weekends I painted, wrote, rested. I had turned the sewing room into a painting studio. The walls were full of my works. They weren't perfect, but they were mine. Every brushstroke was an affirmation of life, that I was still here, that I still had something to say. One afternoon, while I was painting the sunset I saw from my window, the doorbell rang. It was a young woman, about 30 years old, with a baby in her arms. "Mrs. Marquez?" she asked timidly. "Yes, I am Arthur Vance's daughter. Maybe you don't remember me. You took care of me when I was a child." I looked closer. Yes, I could see the little 5-year-old girl in her eyes. "Claire," I said, remembering. "No, wait, Arthur's daughter, let's call her Julie." "Julie, you were so small." "Yes. My father told me what you did for him, what you did for us." "How did I help?" "He wanted you to know something. Everything you did for me when I was a child, how you took care of me when my mother died and my father couldn't be there. I never forgot it. You taught me that kindness exists, that not all people are bad. I came to thank you, and to introduce you to my daughter. Her name is Margaret. After you." Tears ran down my cheeks, without me being able to stop them. I took that baby in my arms, tiny, beautiful, with her whole life ahead of her. "It is an honor," I whispered. Julie stayed an hour. We talked about her life, her family, her work as a doctor. She told me my story had inspired her too, that it had taught her that it is never too late to defend yourself, to reclaim your dignity. When she left, I stayed in my living room, holding the blanket the baby had left forgotten. It smelled of milk and innocence. I thought about everything that had happened, about the betrayal, about the pain, about the public humiliation. But I also thought about what came after, about the strength I found, about the women I helped, about the life I built. If I had been given a choice, would I have preferred that Richard never betrayed me? That Victoria never humiliated me? That none of this had happened? The answer was complicated, because yes, I would have saved myself a lot of pain. But I would also have missed this awakening, this version of myself I never knew existed. Sometimes, pain is the price we pay for our transformation. And although the cost was high, what I gained was invaluable. That night, I sat down to write one last post on my blog. "Dear friends," I wrote, "it has been 18 months since that night at the wedding. 18 months since I decided my silence was over. In that time, I have received thousands of messages. I have met hundreds of brave women. I have cried with you. I have celebrated with you. And I have learned something important. We are not victims. We are survivors. We are warriors. We are women who decided our story would not end in betrayal, but in triumph. My name is Margaret Marquez. I am 71 years old, and my story is just beginning." I published the text and closed the computer. Outside, the sun was setting. The sky was a mix of orange, pink, and purple. Beautiful, imperfect, perfect. I poured myself a glass of wine, something I never did. But today was special. Today I was celebrating, not revenge, not justice, but something more important. I was celebrating my freedom. I raised the glass toward the sky, toward my husband who had died so many years ago, toward all the women who had shared their stories with me, toward the woman I once was and the woman I had become. "For us," I said out loud, "for those who survived, For those who are fighting, for those who will come after. I drank the wine slowly, savoring every sip. And then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I smiled. Not a polite smile, not a smile to please others, but a real smile, genuine, full of peace, because finally I understood something fundamental. My name was no longer tied to my son, to my role as a selfless mother, to my story of sacrifice. My name was mine. Margaret Marquez, 71 years old, painter, writer, activist, survivor. And my story, my true story, was just beginning.